I.O. Table Talks.
Blenden met Brian.
Blenden met Brian.
I think authenticity is about building trust. And if you want to build trust with people, being authentic and open about the use of your AI in your organization or with your customer and client interactions, it only makes you more trustworthy because most people aren't doing that today.
Welkom bij I.O. Table Talks, Blenden met Brian. In deze podcastserie gaat Brian Heerman het gesprek aan met gasten uit verschillende branches en sectoren. En over blenden gesproken, in elke podcastaflevering blendt Brian de favoriete cocktail of mocktail van zijn gast. Want zeg nou zelf, met een drankje wordt toch elk gesprek beter?
Welcome to a special edition of I.O. Table Talk podcast, Blending with Brian. We're recording at the Jaarbeurs in Utrecht during the Content Marketing and Web Editorial Congress organized by I.O. And I'm happy to have the keynote speaker of today here in my podcast. And we are really happy because he is one of the most renowned keynote speakers of the world, I guess, on this topic. A writer of bestsellers, entrepreneur, and a TV producer. He is a man of many talents. Normally, I also blend a cocktail for you.
I heard.
But because of this special edition, we won't do it. We only have 20 minutes of time.
Okay.
So we're not going to waste any time on drinking. But I'm happy to have you here in my podcast, Andrew Davis.
Hey, thanks so much for having me, Brian. I'm bummed that we're not drinking the blended drink, but we'll have to catch up after this.
We'll do definitely. Tell me a little bit about yourself, because not everybody would know you, but tell me a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Well, I started my career in the television business, as you alluded to, and I worked for some national news programs in the United States. One was called The Today Show, and I wrote for them. And then I got my dream job at the Jim Henson Company working with the Muppets, which is actually where I learned all about marketing. Then I started my own agency with a business partner of mine who was also a television producer named Jim Costco. We started that in 2002. We grew the agency to 2012, then we sold it. And after we sold it, I took some time off and then decided I'd write a book called Brandscaping, which is all about kind of the power of partnerships when it comes to marketing. And since then, I've just been writing books and speaking around the world about all sorts of stuff. So the last year I've spent kind of challenging myself to figure out AI, which I don't know if I've figured out, but I've certainly got my own unique perspective on, I think.
And let's talk about that unique perspective, because I've just attended your keynote, and I really think that you have a unique perspective, but also a unique way of presenting your perspective. So it was really energetic and really insightful. But please, could you give me just a ChatGPT summary of your keynote we just heard today?
Yeah, sure. I think I could summarize it as if I was ChatGPT in just a few sentences. I think AI is more powerful if you think of it as a creative collaborator and a partner instead of just an answer tool. And I think if you shift your perspective to thinking of it as a creative collaborator and a partner, you become more valuable by using AI to enhance your talents and abilities and even the way you think. And so, I call this building your digital Doppelgänger. That's
Doppelganger.
Doppelganger.
Yes, like
Doppelganger. Yeah.
Okay.
I'll use Doppelganger for the rest of this. But I think it's, I see it as kind of a virtual version of yourself that can help you become more creative and accomplish more using AI as a partner instead of just a tool.
Yeah, because that digital doppelganger, the Doppelganger, that was a really important part of your keynote. The importance of having it. Can you elaborate a little bit further on what it specifically is and why it's needed to create your own doppelganger? And tell a bit about your doppelganger.
Okay. Well, my digital doppelganger is named Drudini. And, the idea is that the state of AI today is that it's, the brain of something like ChatGPT is pretty small. It's like the size of a squirrel's brain. So the idea with digital doppelgangers today is that you need to give them small tasks and then teach them how you do the task. So for example, I demonstrated how Drudini writes video scripts for me, and they're not video scripts that look like any other script from any other person. So what I had to do was kind of give him some examples of the kinds of scripts that I write, then teach him, the right from wrong, like how to write it my way, not the way that everybody else does. And what ends up happening is you take a tool like ChatGPT and you turn it into something that normally just spits out like C- content, I call it. It's just commodity content that anybody could write. And when you build a doppelganger with a squirrel-sized task, you actually end up with something that's done really well at a high standard. I call it A+ work if you're really good at teaching it, and it can do it very consistently. But most importantly, it can teach you things about yourself and your creative process or your creative abilities that you didn't know beforehand. So I asked Drew Dini to tell me, what's my personal style when I write scripts, and he actually, kind of outlined and was able to articulate in a way I'd never seen before. Someone kind of described the way I write and the way I think. And so if you think of it as its superpower is mimicry and its ability to just kind of imitate you, then you can kind of unlock the potential of what AI can do for you personally. It can make you more valuable, more creative, and it can really be the best kind of collaborator you've ever had.
Because you're actually creating a really detailed mirror of yourself.
That's right.
What you're doing.
That's right.
The topic of this season's Table Talk is how to blend authenticity with digital, and basically that's what we're talking about.
That's exactly right.
Getting the content that you are creating through your AI really authentic by actually training them and creating a real doppelganger.
Yes.
Can you tell me a little bit how? So I'm Brian,
yeah,
and I want to create my own doppelganger. Let's call him Brianmo.
I like it.
I don't know.
I like it.
Where do I start? What do I do?
Okay, so there's kind of 4 main steps. So the first thing you need to do for Brianmo to work is the first thing you have to do is kind of find a small scope. So you can't, at this point, you can't replicate your entire brain. You're going to have to take a specific task. So if you wanted to create even a podcast outline once a week with a new guest, maybe that's the scope of this Brianmo, right? So you've got the scope, that's a good scope. It won't be able to write a whole script for a whole show. It can't, outline 43 topics.
It could outline the introduction.
Exactly. So if you wanted to write a great introduction script, it could do that really well. So that's the first thing. The second thing is you need to give it some examples. So the best thing for you to do might be to take the last 5 intro scripts you wrote or the transcripts from the last 5 podcasts, and you want to have those ready to share with your digital doppelganger when you're going to build it. The next thing you need to do is you need to carve off a place to do it. So like in ChatGPT, you're going to start a brand new chat and you're going to call it Brianmo Intro Script Writer, right? And that you're always going to come back to that one chat. You're never going to close it. You don't delete it. You're just going to always use that to continuously teach Brianmo how to write better. And you're going to just use that for intro scripts. Then you just say like, hey, Brianmo, you're going to write my intro scripts for my podcast. And I have 3 intros that I've done in the past. I want to share those with you. And Brianmo will start interacting with you. But at first he's like a squirrel. He's like, oh, I got it. I can write an intro script. You kind of have to teach it to calm down and say, I have a sample for you. Do you want to look at the sample? So you integrate your new ideas. Then you need to monitor what it's learning. Because sometimes in the very beginning, it's learning weird things. It'll be like, oh, I see.
Doesn't get the essence immediately.
It doesn't. No. So it'll say like, oh, Brian, I noticed that you pause a lot. So I'm going to include, you're like, no, I don't want you to include pauses. That's just me naturally. So you just need to kind of help it understand that. Then after you've kind of refined how it works, one of the best things you can do is ask it to create you a new intro script for something you haven't done yet. And then edit it yourself. So I want you to take it out of ChatGPT and then edit it on your own computer, then upload it again and say, hey, Brianmo, I like what you wrote, but I edited it to make it a little bit more on my own. What do you learn from this process? And if you just do that for a few times, I bet in 40 minutes, you'd have a really good scriptwriter that thinks like you and sounds like you and can write an intro for a new guest that you've never even introduced it to very quickly. And at the end of this process, you have something that's really powerful where you can just go in and say, hey, Brianmo, I'm doing a podcast. The next guest is Andrew Davis. Can you write a 30-second intro for it? And it'll pop it out and it'll sound like you. And if it doesn't, you just need to retrain it. You need to say, hey, look, you went off the little rails here. I don't know where you got this information.
So actually, small bits and pieces, a specific task, and then create more specific tasks and train them individually, and that's how actually it works.
That's how the Doppelganger.
It won't be like a big Brandmo, which is like a clone which can do anything, but just drag it out in just little pieces. And well, actually, what I also found stunning was you played with the two letters of AI. You said, well, actually, you don't have to think about AI. It's more like IA. It's like the Intelligent Augmentation.
That's right.
Give us a little bit more light on that one.
Well, intelligence, AI to me sounds scary, and even my early experiments in AI, I thought, wow, this is really intimidating. I don't know if this is going to be that helpful. But the more I built Drudini's out, and the more I kind of found my digital doppelganger valuable, the more I realized he was just making me feel smarter and accomplish more and even learn more about myself. And that's when I thought intelligence augmentation makes much more sense, and it's less intimidating. So intelligence augmentation is really doing more with AI than you could do alone. It's a partnership. And so the whole idea is that you can augment your own intelligence by really building something that thinks like you and feels like you and acts like you. It understands your opinions, your preferences. It understands your ethical standards. The more you build this out, I think the more powerful it becomes. And it's just making you more intelligent, as well as making the AI itself more intelligent as a whole. So yeah, thinking of it as intelligence augmentation feels less intimidating, I think, but it also makes it feel very useful to me. It's not just a tool. It's a collaborator.
Yeah, because that's what you say. It's not a tool. It's your cognitive.
Yep. Collaborator.
Sorry,
yeah.
I'm not native.
No, that's all right. You're doing great. So, you can tell by my Dutch that it's a disaster.
Yeah.
So
you still try to say Doppelgänger.
Doppelgänger.
So, but getting to that, because one of the things that also struck me at your presentation, you talked about the digital doppelganger paradox.
Yes.
And actually, by a lot of companies, people are secretly using AI, not being open about that. Give a little bit more color on that part of your speech.
So I call this artificial influence, but there's a recent survey that said that 70% of employees at major corporations around the world are using ChatGPT every day at work to do work, but they're not telling their bosses and they're not telling their coworkers. So this idea that you're kind of secretly using AI, but you can't really fathom that other people are using AI secretly is a paradox to me. And I think we need to be very transparent about how we're using AI, when we're using it. And we need to start with our own teams. Like if you can't share with your boss or your coworker that you've used ChatGPT to help you create something, I think we're setting up an environment where we're really deceiving people, and we're going to lose their trust as a result when they figure it out, because they will figure it out. So I think we need to be transparent about our use of AI anytime we use it. So if you email me, you can email Drudini actually if you want, but if you're listening to the podcast or watching, you can email him at drudini@monumentalshift.com. You can email him right now, and he will email you back. But at the bottom, there's a disclaimer. It says, like, this email was fully written by AI. It's trained by Andrew, but I'm not responsible for what he says, so that people know what to expect. And if I send you an email that I used AI to assist, it says, this email was drafted by my digital doppelganger named Drudini. He's powered by AI, but I have reviewed this and I've sent it, with my full knowledge and understanding. And I think it's opened up a transparent interaction on the other end. I've had so many people email back and say, I'm so glad you told me you're using AI. Guess what? I was inspired by that, so I used AI to draft the response. And I feel like I'm having a much more meaningful conversation with people instead of trying to determine, did they use AI to write this? And, is this unique content? So I think we need to be transparent about it. I think it'll enhance your relationships. And we have to decide today, because we risk losing a lot of valuable relationships if we deceive them, just because we want to keep it a secret.
Yeah, and don't be transparent. And that's
right.
Actually, because as you just said, the theme of this season's I/O Table Talks Blending with Brian is how to blend authenticity with digital. And if I listen to you actually say you are being authentic as a brand or organization if you are being open when you are using AI. So part of the authenticity is being this transparency.
That's right. I think authenticity is about building trust. And if you want to build trust with people, being authentic and open about the use of your AI in your organization or with your customer and client interactions, it only makes you more trustworthy, because most people aren't doing that today. And it's refreshing when somebody says, hey, my team came up with an SEO ad strategy for you and we used AI to assist and to give us some insight that we didn't have before. So if you have any questions, let us know and we can tell you what AI came up with versus what we came up. I think that is a huge amount of trust with me. And I hope that other people embrace that because that's authentic. Yeah. That's really authentic.
I want to end with one last thing. You talked about the AI decision-making matrix.
Yes.
Which is, I think, very useful matrix for decision makers to think about when to use AI or when to use a human to lead the process and be assisted by AI. Can you shed a little light on that matrix?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I'll try to imagine in your head if you're listening. It's like on one axis you have the value of the relationship for the recipient of the content you're creating or the email interaction or whatever it is. And it goes from high at the top to low at the bottom, right? And then on the other axis you have essentially the value of AI to that assigned task. Is it high value? Like maybe you're using AI to read all your reviews and respond. That's very valuable because it's very good at that. But remember, those relationships, if you think of them as low value, you need to be transparent about the fact that AI is responding to those. So it may be AI led, but it needs to be human oversight and you have to be transparent about it. And then on the other side, you have like high value relationships. It could be internal. It could be your CEO. And it could be that AI adds a lot of value to interpreting a lot of data for the CEO. Well, that's great, but it needs to be human first and digital assisted, and you have to be honest and open about it. So, that valuable relationship you don't want to jeopardize with some AI mistake because you're using AI first. And then on the other side, you have kind of low value of AI, meaning it doesn't provide much value, and you have low value relationships. I question if you should even do those things, but I think those things, you just leave them be human led for now. And then the last quadrant, essentially high value, but low value of AI to the task. I think this is the biggest opportunity to experiment because you have high value relationships you'd like to augment, but right now AI can't seem to fit the bill or make an impact. This is a great way for you and your team to think through how could AI in the near future assist with that? Because trust me, that's where everything's moving.
Do you have an example for that last?
Yeah, I think on that side it would be negotiating a client contract or a legal agreement. This is a really easy place for AI to have a big impact, but it must be human-led and you need a lot of oversight right now. And right now AI seems to bring low value, but it's getting very good at this. And if you asked AI to, read a legal contract between a client and a customer and give you some negotiation points, it does a pretty decent job of it, but you need to be transparent about it and you need to be willing to experiment to see if it can work. So I think, I see other uses, but I think those are the easiest ones for today.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Andrew, for this talk, for this chat here at the Jabus Utrecht at the Congress of Content Marketing and Web Editorial. Really great to have you here and thankful that you made some time to have this talk with us.
This is great and I can't wait for my blended drink to show up.
Definitely.
Thanks, Brian.
Dit was Blenden met Brian, een podcast van Blended Agency I.O. Wil je meer afleveringen beluisteren? Abonneer je dan nu op deze podcastserie. We gaan met gasten uit verschillende branches in gesprek over de digitale uitdagingen die er leven. Denk je nou dat jij een goede gast zou zijn bij een van de I.O. Table Talks? Ga dan naar iodigital.com/tabletalks. Tot de volgende keer!